who should be investing? Again, I liken this market to the tech boom of the early 90s. And I think anyone who saw tech, the trend towards tech, and invested in it and took a sort of a smart approach to diversifying their exposure did very well. And they did definitely way better than the person who was afraid of the trend and afraid of the new technology and stayed out of the market completely. So who do we think should be investing? Any investor with some amount of risk appetite and someone who sees and believes that this trend will continue. Again, it's still a risk asset. And we've mentioned the volatility time and time again. So investors need to have proper risk mitigation techniques when it comes to how they're allocating. So generally, a small allocation is the best way to enter into a new and growing market. So in general, we see people allocating 1 to 5%. And I think most importantly, this market has best served long-term investors or investors with a long-term view. In my personal experience and people who I've met who are trying to come into this market and trade daily, try and find dips and sell on peaks, and getting in and out and taking leverage and taking higher risk positions, overwhelmingly, I find those people end up losing. Whereas people who come in with a long-term strategy, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, perhaps even longer as the space grows and the technology matures, those investors with a longer term view overwhelmingly are coming out way ahead of anyone else. Okay, and then lastly, why? Why do you add this into your portfolio? And I think the best explanation for this is that it has an asymmetric return profile. And what do we mean by an asymmetric return profile? So this is just a basic numerical example. Okay, so we've got 3 portfolios compared to one another. The dark blue line in the middle is just a basic portfolio that grows at 10% per annum with no exposure to risk assets. So 100 Rand invested in that portfolio is going to be worth 146 Rand at the end of 4 years. Okay. Now, if you take that exact same portfolio and you allocate 2% of the assets into cryptocurrencies or any other high risk asset, and that allocation goes to zero, the market goes sour, or the technology fails, or anything negative happens, and those assets become worth zero. Now, that portfolio at the end of 4 years is worth 143 Rand. So it only underperforms the safe portfolio by 2%. Now, on the flip side of that, if we see the trend continue and we see adoption continue to grow, which gets reflected in the price of cryptocurrencies, and historically we've seen them grow 200% year on year. So if that same portfolio with a 2% allocation grows at that rate, then as opposed to 146 Rand at the end of 4 years, you've got 185 Rand, which is a 27% overperformance. So the potential for asymmetric returns is probably the best reason to consider allocating towards cryptocurrencies. Okay, now just a little bit of a light-hearted example and what kind of asymmetric returns are possible in this space. This is a Shiba Inu is a meme token, so to speak. It's kind of like Doge. And because these networks are public, you can track wallet addresses. So this wallet address bought approximately $8,000 of SHIB. What would it be now? Almost 18 months ago, 17, 18 months ago. And a bit earlier in the year when that token had a massive run up in its price, that $8,000 was valued at $5.7 billion, which is just an astronomical return. But again, other elements of the market need to be taken into account, because that 5.7 billion is not really a realizable amount because of the liquidity in the market. Shiba Inu is not a widely traded coin. It's not accessible on a lot of exchanges. So the truth is they probably wouldn't be able to realize that value, but it's just a snapshot and an example of what is possible in this market.